Patricia Martinez looked me dead in the eye across her perfectly set dining table and said the words that would haunt our relationship forever. Ryan deserves so much better than someone like you. You're absolutely worthless, Maya. No family, no money, no class. I don't know what my son was thinking. The crystal wine glasses caught the chandelier light as silence filled the room. My husband Ryan sat frozen, fork halfway to his mouth, unable to meet my gaze. What Patricia didn't know in that moment was that I held the deed to something very precious to her, something that would change everything between us. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The law office of Thompson and Associates buzzed with the quiet efficiency of expensive legal work. I sat in the burgundy leather chair, my hands folded in my lap, watching Marcus Thompson shuffle through papers with the methodical precision of someone who dealt with life-changing documents every day. The morning sun slanted through the tall windows, casting long shadows across his mahogany desk. Ryan fidgeted beside me, checking his phone for the third time in 5 minutes. Maya, I need you to understand what you're signing here, Marcus said, his voice carrying the weight of professional responsibility. His brown eyes were serious behind wire-rimmed glasses. This isn't just any investment property. This is a primary residence with significant emotional attachments for the current occupants. I nodded, pen poised above the signature line. The documents before me represented 18 months of careful planning, strategic saving, and calculated moves that no one in Ryan's family knew about. Sterling Financial Group had taught me well about investment opportunities, and when this particular mortgage came up for sale from the bank, I recognized the address immediately. 1247 Maple Grove Drive. The house where Ryan had grown up. The house where his mother Patricia held court every Sunday for family dinners. The house where she had made it crystal clear that I would never be good enough for her son. The current owners have been making payments consistently, Marcus continued, flipping to another page. They have no idea the mortgage has been sold. Legally, you're not required to inform them unless they default or you choose to make changes to the terms. Ryan looked up from his phone, suddenly paying attention. Maya, what exactly are you buying? You said it was just an investment property in a good neighborhood. I met his gaze steadily. My husband of 3 years had always been trusting to a fault, never questioning my financial decisions because frankly I was better with money than he was. His marketing job at a local firm paid well enough, but he spent freely and saved little. Meanwhile, my position as a senior financial analyst had taught me the value of long-term planning and strategic investments. It is a good neighborhood, I replied truthfully. Established area, property values have been climbing steadily for the past 5 years. The mortgage terms are favorable, and the current owners have equity built up. Marcus spread out the property disclosure documents. The house was a beautiful 2-story colonial built in 1998, featuring 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a gourmet kitchen, and a sprawling backyard that Patricia took great pride in maintaining. The neighborhood of Riverside Hills was one of the most desirable in our area, with tree-lined streets and a strong sense of community. The purchase price for the mortgage is $347,000, Marcus explained. The remaining balance owed by the homeowners is $412,000, which means you'll be collecting monthly payments of $2,847 for the next 19 years, assuming they don't refinance or pay early. I signed my name with a flourish. Maya Chen, new mortgage holder for the Martinez family home. The irony wasn't lost on me. 6 months ago, Patricia had told me I would never amount to anything, that I was dragging her son down with my common background and lack of family connections. She had no idea that while she was busy looking down on me, I had been quietly building a financial portfolio that would make her middle-class comfort look modest by comparison. The meeting concluded with handshakes and the exchange of official documents. Marcus handed me a thick folder containing all the mortgage details, payment history, and property information. You'll receive the first payment next month, he said. The homeowners will be notified by mail that their mortgage has been transferred to a new servicer, but your identity as the actual owner remains confidential unless you choose to reveal it. Walking out of the law office, Ryan was unusually quiet. We climbed into my reliable Honda Civic, a car that Patricia had once sniffed at dismissively, calling it appropriate for someone of your station. If only she knew that this supposedly modest car was paid off completely, unlike her lease payments on a BMW that stretched their monthly budget. Maya, Ryan said as we pulled out of the parking structure, you've been making a lot of big financial moves lately. The investment accounts, the emergency fund, now this property. I'm not complaining, but where is all this money coming from? I glanced at him while stopped at a red light. My husband was a good man, kind and gentle, but he had grown up with a certain level of comfort that made him oblivious to the value of money. His parents had paid for his college, helped with his first car, and still occasionally slipped him cash when they thought he needed it. He had never experienced the grinding necessity of making every dollar count. Ryan, I've been working in finance for 7 years. I understand investments, compound interest, and market opportunities. While you've been spending your salary on dinners out and gadgets, I've been putting 30% of my income into carefully chosen investments. He nodded slowly, but I could see the wheels turning. It just seems like a lot. And why didn't you tell me which property you were buying? We're married, shouldn't we make these decisions together? The light turned green, and I pressed the accelerator perhaps a bit more firmly than necessary. You're right, we should discuss major financial decisions. But tell me honestly, Ryan, when have you ever wanted to sit down and go over investment strategies? When have you ever asked to see our portfolio balance or understand our long-term financial goals? Silence filled the car. He knew I was right. Ryan preferred to live in the comfortable assumption that everything would work out fine, that his steady job and my finance would somehow combine to create a secure future without him having to think too hard about the details. I trust you, he said finally.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Finally. I know you're smart about money, I just wish you would share more with me about what you're planning. I softened my tone. Despite everything, I loved my husband. His trusting nature and easygoing personality were part of what had attracted me to him in the first place. It wasn't his fault that his mother had decided I was the enemy before she even got to know me. You're right, I admitted. I should include you more. But Ryan, you also need to understand something. Your family, especially your mother, has made it very clear that they think I'm not good enough for you. Every Sunday dinner, every family gathering, there are little comments about my background, my family, my education, my car, my clothes. I've been building something to prove that their assumptions about me are wrong. Ryan's jaw tightened. This was a conversation we'd had variations of before. He knew his mother could be difficult, but he had grown up with her criticism disguised as concern, so it seemed normal to him. He didn't always catch the subtle ways she undermined me, or the passive-aggressive comments that left me feeling small and unwelcome. She means well, he said automatically, the response he always gave when I brought up his mother's behavior. Does she, Ryan? Last Sunday, she told Grace Williams right in front of me that she was worried about our future children because they wouldn't have any proper family influence from my side. When I mentioned that I had been promoted to senior analyst, she said it was nice that I had found steady work, as if I was a clerk instead of someone who manages multi-million-dollar investment portfolios. We pulled into the parking lot of our apartment complex. The building was modest but well-maintained, and our one-bedroom unit was comfortable, if small. Patricia had made it clear that she thought we should be living somewhere more substantial, somewhere that reflected Ryan's status as her son. What she didn't understand was that we chose to live modestly because I was funneling every extra dollar into investments that would secure our future. Maybe tonight we can sit down and you can show me everything, Ryan suggested as we climbed the stairs to our third-floor apartment. The whole portfolio, the investment strategy, all of it. I want to understand what you're building. I smiled, feeling a warmth in my chest that had been missing during the tense conversation. I'd like that. I think you'll be surprised by what we've accomplished. That evening, I spread our financial documents across the small dining table. Ryan's eyes widened as I walked him through 7 years of disciplined saving and strategic investing. The emergency fund that could cover our expenses for 8 months. The retirement accounts that were already ahead of schedule. The diversified portfolio of stocks, bonds, and now real estate that had grown to a value that exceeded both our annual salaries combined. Maya, this is incredible, he breathed, staring at the bottom-line figures. I had no idea we were doing this well. We weren't, Ryan, I was. And that's not a criticism, it's just a fact. While you were living paycheck to paycheck, I was building something bigger. He looked up from the papers, and I saw something new in his expression. Respect maybe, or recognition. My mother has no idea, does she? I shook my head. No one does. I've learned that people make assumptions based on what they see on the surface. Your mother sees my used car, our modest apartment, my careful spending habits, and she assumes I'm poor or financially irresponsible. She doesn't see the discipline behind those choices. Ryan was quiet for a long moment, processing this new understanding of his wife. The investment property you bought today. Which neighborhood did you say it was in? Riverside Hills. It's a beautiful colonial house, well maintained, in an established neighborhood with good property values. What's the address? I met his eyes steadily. 1247 Maple Grove Drive. The color drained from Ryan's face. He stared at me, then down at the mortgage documents, then back at me. Maya, that's my parents' house. That's where I grew up. I know, you bought my parents' mortgage. Yes. He stood up abruptly, running his hands through his hair. Why would you do that? What are you planning? I remained seated, my voice calm and measured. I'm not planning anything malicious, if that's what you're worried about. It's a solid investment. The payments are consistent, the property value is strong, and the terms are favorable. The fact that it happens to be your childhood home is a coincidence. Is it though? Really? I sighed, knowing this moment would come eventually. Ryan, your mother has spent 3 years making me feel like I don't belong in your family. She's questioned my worth, my background, my intentions, and my value as your wife. I didn't buy the mortgage to hurt anyone, but I'd be lying if I said there wasn't some satisfaction in knowing that her monthly housing payment now comes to me. Ryan sat back down heavily. She doesn't know, she has no idea. The mortgage company will notify them that the loan has been transferred to a new servicer, but my name won't be mentioned unless there's a problem with payments or I choose to reveal myself. And you're planning to reveal yourself? I shrugged. I haven't decided. For now, I'm content to let things continue as they are. Your parents make their payment. I collect the income, everyone's happy. Maya, this feels like you're playing some kind of game. His words stung because there was truth in them. Maybe I am. But Ryan, I didn't start this game. Your mother did, the first time she looked at me and decided I wasn't worthy of her son. Every Sunday dinner where she seats me at the far end of the table. Every family photo where she manages to position herself between us. Every gift exchange where she gives you something expensive and thoughtful and hands me something clearly picked up last minute from a discount store. Ryan's shoulders sagged. He couldn't deny the pattern I was describing because he had witnessed it himself, even if he had chosen to minimize or excuse it. What do you want me to do? He asked quietly. I want you to understand something, Ryan. I'm not the poor, worthless girl your mother thinks I am. I'm not dragging you down or holding you back. If anything, I'm the reason we have financial security and a promising future. I've been building something real while she's been judging me based on superficial appearances. That night, as we lay in bed, Ryan was unusually quiet. I could feel him processing this new reality, trying to reconcile the wife he thought he knew with the financial strategist who had just revealed herself. I had been hiding my true capabilities for 3 years, not out of shame, but out of a desire to avoid the kind of attention that might invite more scrutiny from his family. Maya, Ryan's voice was soft in the darkness. Yes, I'm sorry I never stood up for you more. With my mother, I mean. I kept thinking that if I just gave it time, she would come around and see how wonderful you are. I turned toward him, and now I think. Maybe it's time she learned who she's really been dealing with. The next morning brought the familiar ritual of Sunday family dinner preparation. Patricia Martinez took great pride in her weekly gatherings, seeing them as an opportunity to maintain family connections, and if I was being honest, to hold court as the undisputed matriarch of the Martinez clan. The dinners were elaborate affairs with multiple courses, carefully coordinated serving dishes, and an unspoken but rigid hierarchy of seating and conversation that placed Patricia at the center of everything. Ryan and I arrived at 1247 Maple Grove Drive, at exactly 5:30, as was expected. The house looked exactly as it had in the property photos Marcus had shown me, but seeing it with my new knowledge felt surreal. The mortgage payment that kept this pristine colonial maintained and secure would now be flowing into my investment account. Patricia answered the door, wearing an elegant navy dress that I recognized as expensive, her silver hair perfectly styled, and her smile warm for Ryan and coolly polite for me. Ryan, sweetheart, come in. Maya. The difference in tone was subtle but unmistakable. Hi, Mom. Ryan kissed her cheek. The house looks beautiful, as always. She beamed at the compliment. Patricia took enormous pride in her home, frequently mentioning the renovations, the landscaping, and the neighborhood prestige to anyone who would listen. She had no idea that I now held a very intimate knowledge of exactly how much those monthly payments cost her family. Bob Martinez emerged from the living room, a gentle man who had learned over the years to navigate around his wife's stronger personality. He greeted us both warmly, and I had always gotten along well with Ryan's father. Bob was the type of person who judged others by their character rather than their circumstances, which made Patricia's attitude toward me all the more glaring by contrast. "Maya, how's work going?" Bob asked as we settled in the living room with pre-dinner drinks. "Very well, thank you. We just closed a major portfolio restructuring for one of our largest clients. It was challenging but rewarding." Patricia's lips pursed slightly. She had never quite understood what I did for a living, and I suspected she preferred to keep it vague, so she could continue thinking of me as somehow beneath her son. "That's nice, dear," Patricia said in the tone one might use with a child describing their crayon drawing. "Ryan, tell us about your marketing campaign. I saw the billboards downtown. Very impressive." The conversation flowed as it always did, with Patricia steering attention toward Ryan's accomplishments, while treating my career as a pleasant hobby. I had grown used to this dynamic, but tonight it felt different. Tonight I knew something that shifted the entire power structure of this room, even if no one else was aware of it yet. Dinner was served in the formal dining room, an elegant space with a mahogany table that seated 8 comfortably. Patricia had set out her best china, the pattern I knew she had registered for when she and Bob were engaged 30 years ago. Everything in this house spoke of stability, tradition, and the kind of generational wealth that built slowly over decades of careful choices and steady appreciation. "Maya," Patricia said as we passed the roasted vegetables, "Ryan mentioned you've been making some investments lately. That's wonderful that you're learning about finances." The condescension in her voice was unmistakable. Learning about finances, as if I were a beginner taking a community college course, rather than a professional who managed investment portfolios worth millions of dollars. "Yes," I replied evenly. "I recently acquired some real estate. It's been an interesting process." "Real estate can be tricky," Bob interjected. "Location is everything. What area did you buy in?" "Riverside Hills, actually. A beautiful colonial house with excellent long-term value potential." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "Riverside Hills, that's a lovely neighborhood. We should drive by sometime and see your property." Ryan caught my eye across the table, and I could see him struggling with whether to say something. The secret felt heavy between us, but I wasn't ready to reveal it yet. There was something powerful about sitting at Patricia's table, eating food prepared in her kitchen, watching her hold court in her dining room, all while knowing that I held the financial instrument that made this entire lifestyle possible. "Maybe sometime," I said non-committally. The conversation moved on to other topics, but I found myself studying the room with new eyes. The built-in china cabinet that displayed Patricia's collection of heirloom pieces. The crown molding that had been custom installed during their renovation 5 years ago. The hardwood floors that Bob had refinished himself last summer. Every detail represented not just their taste and effort, but their financial commitment to this house that was now, in a very real sense, mine. After dinner, while Patricia was busy showing off her latest garden additions to her sister Carol, who had joined us for dessert, Ryan and I stepped out onto the back patio. The evening air was warm, and the landscaping that Patricia took such pride in was indeed impressive. "This is surreal," Ryan whispered, sitting at that table, listening to her talk about the neighborhood and property values, knowing that you own their mortgage. "It's just business, Ryan. They make their payment. I collect the income. Nothing has to change. But something has changed, hasn't it? For you, I mean. The way you see all this." I looked back toward the house, its windows glowing warmly in the gathering dusk. "Yes, something has changed. I used to sit at that table feeling like I didn't belong, like I was being judged and found wanting. Tonight I sat there knowing that I belong anywhere I choose to be." As we prepared to leave, Patricia hugged Ryan goodbye and offered me her usual cool farewell. "Drive safely," she said. The implication being that my driving, like everything else about me, was probably not quite up to her standards. "Thank you for dinner, Patricia. It was lovely as always." Walking to our car, I felt a shift in my perspective that had been building all evening. For 3 years, I had allowed Patricia's disapproval to make me feel small and unwelcome. I had absorbed her subtle criticisms and let them chip away at my confidence. But tonight I realized that her power over me had been entirely illusory. I had been measuring myself against her approval when I should have been recognizing my own strength. "Maya," Ryan said as we drove home through the streets of Riverside Hills. I know you said this was just business, but what happens if my parents find out? What happens to our family? I considered his question carefully. Ryan, our family isn't built on pretense or keeping secrets, but it's also not built on me accepting disrespect from someone who doesn't know what she's talking about. Your mother has spent 3 years assuming I'm not good enough for you. Maybe it's time she learned what I'm actually capable of. The monthly mortgage statement arrived the following Tuesday, addressed to Patricia Martinez, and indicating that her loan had been transferred to a new servicing company. She called Ryan that evening, mildly annoyed by the inconvenience of having to update her automatic payment system, but not particularly concerned about the change itself. Mortgage transfers were common in the banking industry, and she had no reason to suspect anything unusual. I watched Ryan field the phone call, his answers carefully neutral as his mother complained about the hassle of dealing with new paperwork. He didn't lie to her, but he didn't volunteer any information either. When he hung up, we looked at each other with the shared knowledge of a secret that was growing heavier by the day. She's not suspicious, I asked. No, she just thinks it's annoying that banks sell mortgages around like trading cards. She has no idea there's any connection to us. 3 weeks passed in this strange new normal. Patricia's mortgage payment arrived in my account electronically, on the first of the month, a substantial sum that represented years of her family's financial commitment. I deposited it along with my other investment income, watching our portfolio balance climb steadily higher. Meanwhile, Sunday dinners continued as they always had, with Patricia maintaining her subtle campaign of disapproval toward me. If anything, her comments seemed to be growing bolder, perhaps because she sensed no resistance from me. She critiqued the grocery store where I shopped, suggested that I might benefit from a wardrobe consultant, and made pointed remarks about the importance of family background when raising children. Ryan was growing increasingly uncomfortable with his mother's behavior, especially now that he understood the financial reality of our situation. During one particularly painful dinner, where Patricia had spent 20 minutes describing the wonderful daughter-in-law her friend Margaret had acquired, Ryan finally spoke up. Mom, Maya is wonderful exactly as she is. I wish you would make more effort to get to know her instead of constantly comparing her to other people. Patricia looked genuinely surprised by his defense of me. Ryan, I'm not comparing anyone to anyone. I'm simply saying that compatibility is important in marriage, and certain backgrounds tend to blend better than others. The coded language was maddening. Patricia never said anything directly insulting. She wrapped her disapproval in concerns about compatibility and suggestions for improvement. It was death by 1,000 small cuts, each one individually, deniable but collectively devastating. That night, driving home from another tense family dinner, Ryan finally asked the question I had been waiting for. Maya, how long are you planning to keep this secret? I don't know. Maybe forever. Maybe until she crosses a line that I can't ignore. Maybe until I get tired of listening to her lecture me about financial responsibility, while I'm literally funding her lifestyle. Ryan was quiet for several blocks. What if I told her? What if I explained who you really are, and what you've accomplished? Would she believe you, or would she assume you're exaggerating to defend your poor choice in wives? She'd believe the documentation. Bank statements don't lie. I pulled into our apartment complex parking lot and turned off the engine. Ryan, I love you, and I know you want to fix this, but this isn't something you can solve by showing your mother my portfolio balance. Her problem with me isn't really about money. It's about control and status, and her belief that she knows what's best for you. Then what's the solution? We can't live like this forever, with this secret between us and my family. I unbuckled my seatbelt and turned to face him fully. The solution is for your mother to learn some respect. And sometimes, people don't learn respect until they realize they've been underestimating someone who has power over something they care about. Ryan's eyes widened as he understood what I was suggesting. You're going to tell her you own the mortgage. I'm going to wait for the right moment. And when that moment comes, your mother is going to discover that the woman she's been calling worthless actually holds the deed to her most precious possession. The call came on a Wednesday morning, while I was reviewing quarterly reports at Sterling Financial Group. Marcus Thompson's name appeared on my phone screen, and I answered with the professional courtesy I had learned to maintain even when my personal life intersected with business matters. Maya, we need to discuss your Riverside Hills property. There's been a development. I stepped away from my desk and found a quiet conference room. What kind of development? The homeowners contacted the servicing company yesterday. They're interested in refinancing to take advantage of lower interest rates. This could potentially pay off your mortgage entirely, which would end your monthly income stream, but give you a substantial lump sum profit. My mind raced through the implications. Patricia and Bob were savvy enough to recognize a good refinancing opportunity, which meant they were actively managing their finances rather than simply making payments. It also meant they had enough equity and creditworthiness to qualify for better terms than their current mortgage offered. What are the numbers? I asked. Based on current property values and their payment history, they could easily refinance. You'd receive approximately $421,000, which represents a profit of about $74,000 on your original investment, plus the monthly payments you've already collected. It was a solid return for less than 2 months of ownership. But it would also mean losing the psychological advantage I held over Patricia. More importantly, it would eliminate the monthly reminder that her comfortable lifestyle was now connected to my financial decisions. Do I have any legal right to prevent the refinancing? Marcus paused. Legally, no. Mortgage holders can refinance at any time as long as they meet the new lender's requirements. However, you could make a counteroffer to modify their current loan terms, potentially lowering their interest rate to match what they might get elsewhere. That would keep them as your borrowers, while still providing them with the financial benefit they're seeking. The idea was intriguing. I could position myself as a helpful, responsive mortgage holder, while maintaining the underlying relationship that gave me leverage over Patricia's housing situation. It would also demonstrate financial sophistication that would be impossible for her to dismiss if she ever learned the truth. Let me think about it, and get back to you tomorrow. That evening, I presented the situation to Ryan over dinner at our small kitchen table. He listened carefully as I explained the refinancing option and my potential responses. So you could either take the profit and walk away, or you could modify their loan to keep them as borrowers. Essentially, yes. The modification would show them that their new mortgage holder is sophisticated and accommodating. If your mother ever discovers who actually owns her mortgage, she'll have to acknowledge that I handled the situation professionally and in their best interests. Ryan set down his fork. Maya, do you hear yourself? You're talking about my parents' housing situation like it's a chess game. His words stung because they contained truth. I had been thinking strategically about Patricia's mortgage, viewing it as both an investment opportunity and a psychological victory. But Ryan's family relationships weren't chess pieces to be moved around a board. You're right, I admitted. I'm sorry. This whole situation has gotten more complicated than I intended. What did you intend, exactly?
I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot where our modest cars sat among those of our neighbors. Most of the other residents were young professionals like us, people building their careers and saving for bigger things. It was a comfortable life, but Patricia had always made it clear that she found our circumstances somewhat disappointing for her son. I intended to prove something to myself, I think, that I wasn't the worthless person your mother believed me to be. That I had more power and capability than anyone in your family realized. And have you proved it? I turned back to face him. To myself, yes. To your mother, not yet. She still has no idea who she's been underestimating. Ryan pushed his chair back and joined me at the window. Maybe the question isn't whether you've proved something to her. Maybe the question is whether proving it is worth the damage it might do to our family. Ryan, our family has already been damaged. Every Sunday dinner where your mother treats me like an unwelcome guest. Every family photo where she manages to exclude me or minimize my presence. Every conversation where my career is dismissed and my background is criticized. The damage is already there. He wrapped his arms around me from behind and I leaned back against his chest. I know she's difficult. I know she's not fair to you. But Maya, if she finds out what you've done, it's going to create a crisis that we might not be able to recover from. And if she doesn't find out, nothing changes. I continue to be treated like I don't belong, and you continue to make excuses for her behavior. We stood in silence for several minutes, both of us wrestling with the implications of the choices ahead. I could feel Ryan's internal conflict in the tension of his arms around me. He loved his mother despite her flaws, but he was also beginning to see her behavior toward me with new clarity. What if we told them together? He suggested finally. What if we sat them down and explained everything? Your career, our financial situation, the mortgage purchase, all of it. And you think your mother would react well to learning that the daughter-in-law she's been dismissing as worthless actually owns her house? I think my mother might finally understand that she's been wrong about you. The next morning, I called Marcus back with my decision. I want to offer them a loan modification,
Match the best refinancing terms they've been quoted, but keep them as borrowers under the current mortgage. That's a generous approach. It will save them the costs and hassle of refinancing while giving them the financial benefits they're seeking. Do you want me to contact them directly? Yes, but don't reveal my identity yet. Just present it as a standard business decision from their mortgage holder. 2 days later, Marcus called with their response. They're thrilled. Patricia Martinez specifically asked me to thank the mortgage company for being so accommodating. She said it was refreshing to work with a lender who actually cared about their customers' financial well-being. The irony was almost too perfect. Patricia was praising the very person she had spent 3 years criticizing, not knowing that her worthless daughter-in-law had just saved her family thousands of dollars in refinancing costs while providing them with better loan terms. That Sunday, Patricia was in particularly good spirits during family dinner. She spent the first 20 minutes of the meal describing the wonderful experience she'd had with their mortgage company, praising the professionalism and customer service that had made their loan modifications so smooth. It's so rare to find a financial institution that actually cares about their customers, she said, passing the roasted potatoes. Most banks just see you as a number, but this company went out of their way to help us save money. Bob calculated that we'll save over $300 per month with the new terms. I caught Ryan's eye across the table. He was struggling not to smile at the absurdity of listening to his mother praise me unknowingly. Bob nodded enthusiastically, equally pleased with the financial benefit they had received. That's wonderful, Mom, Ryan said. It sounds like you're dealing with a really quality organization. We are. I told Marcus Thompson, that's our contact at the law firm handling the modification. I told him that whoever owns our mortgage clearly knows what they're doing. It takes real financial sophistication to structure a deal that benefits everyone involved. Carol, Patricia's sister, raised her wine glass. Here's to financial sophistication and companies that treat their customers well. I raised my glass along with everyone else, toasting myself while Patricia continued to have no idea that she was praising the woman she had called worthless just weeks earlier. The situation was becoming almost surreal in its dramatic irony. After dinner, while Patricia was busy in the kitchen preparing coffee and dessert, Bob pulled Ryan and me aside in the living room. I want to thank you both for recommending that law firm, he said quietly. Marcus Thompson was incredibly professional, and the whole process was handled beautifully. Do you know if they handle other types of financial planning? Ryan looked at me with raised eyebrows. We had never recommended Marcus Thompson to Bob. He had assumed we were responsible for the connection because we had mentioned working with lawyers for our own investments. Dad, we didn't actually recommend Marcus. How did you end up working with him? Bob looked confused. The mortgage company connected us with his firm to handle the modification paperwork. I just assumed you had given them his name since you mentioned using lawyers for your investment work. No, that was just a coincidence, I said smoothly. But he is excellent. We've been very pleased with his services. Patricia returned with coffee and her famous apple pie, the recipe she had inherited from her own mother and took great pride in perfecting. As she served dessert, she continued talking about the positive experience with their mortgage modification. Maya, since you work in finance, you probably understand these things better than most people. What do you think about companies that offer loan modifications without being asked? Is that a common practice? I took a careful sip of coffee before answering. It's not extremely common, but it does happen with sophisticated lenders who want to maintain good relationships with reliable borrowers. If someone has a strong payment history and good credit, it makes business sense to offer competitive terms rather than risk losing them to a refinance with another company. That makes sense. I suppose we must have impressed them with our payment record. We've never been late with a mortgage payment in 25 years. That's excellent financial management, I replied truthfully. Consistency like that is exactly what lenders value most. Patricia beamed at the compliment, not realizing that she was receiving praise from the very lender she was discussing. The conversation continued in this vein for another hour, with Patricia describing various aspects of the mortgage modification process while unknowingly seeking validation from the person who had orchestrated the entire arrangement. Driving home that night, Ryan was unusually quiet. I could tell he was processing the evening's conversations and the increasingly complex web of secrets we were maintaining. Maya, this is getting out of hand, he said finally. My parents are starting to ask questions about how we connected them with Marcus. My mother is praising you to your face for work you actually did, but she doesn't know you did it. This can't continue indefinitely. Why not? Your parents are happy with their mortgage terms, I'm earning a good return on my investment, and your mother is finally saying positive things about financial competence. Everyone wins. Everyone wins, except honesty. We're building our relationship with my family. I'm a foundation of secrets and deception. I pulled into our apartment complex and turned off the engine. Ryan, we're simply not volunteering information that isn't relevant to them. Your parents don't need to know the details of our investment portfolio any more than we need to know the details of their retirement planning. But it is relevant when the investment directly involves them. When you own their mortgage, that creates a relationship that goes beyond normal family dynamics. I knew he was right, but I wasn't ready to give up the psychological advantage I had gained. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like I held some power in my relationship with Patricia. She was praising my financial skills without knowing it, demonstrating that her negative opinions about me were based on ignorance rather than reality. Give me more time, I said. Let me figure out the right way to handle this. How much more time? I don't know. Maybe until your mother crosses a line that I can't ignore. Maybe until I'm confident that she'll respect me regardless of whether I'm her mortgage holder. Ryan looked skeptical. And what if that moment never comes? What if she never changes her attitude toward you? Then at least I'll know I tried to give her the opportunity to treat me fairly before I revealed the truth. The following week brought an unexpected development that would test my resolve to keep the secret. Patricia called Ryan on Thursday evening, her voice tight with stress and frustration. Ryan, I need your advice about something. Bob and I received a letter today from our homeowner's insurance company. They're requiring a property inspection because of some neighborhood claims related to water damage. If they find any issues with our house, our premiums could increase significantly, or worse, they might not renew our policy at all. I could hear Patricia's voice through the phone as Ryan put the call on speaker. Her usual composed confidence had been replaced by genuine worry. What kind of issues are they looking for? Ryan asked. Foundation problems, roof damage, plumbing issues, electrical concerns. Anything that might represent a risk to them. The inspector is coming next Tuesday, and I'm terrified about what he might find. This house is 27 years old, and while we've maintained it well, there are always small things that could be flagged as problems. Bob's voice joined the conversation in the background. The real issue is that if our insurance is canceled or becomes too expensive, we might have trouble with the mortgage. I think most lenders require adequate homeowners insurance as a condition of the loan. My stomach tightened as I realized the implications. If Patricia and Bob lost their homeowners insurance or faced dramatically increased premiums, it could affect their ability to maintain their mortgage payments. As their mortgage holder, I had a direct financial interest in ensuring that their insurance remained in place and affordable. Have you talked to your mortgage company about this? Ryan asked. Not yet, Patricia replied. I wanted to wait and see what the inspection reveals before involving them. But Bob is right that we'll need to notify them if our insurance situation changes significantly. Ryan looked at me with raised eyebrows. This was exactly the kind of situation where my role as their mortgage holder became relevant to their family crisis. If Patricia and Bob were facing a potential insurance problem that could affect their housing stability, I had both the right and the responsibility to be involved in finding a solution. Mom, you should definitely keep your mortgage company informed. But also remember that you have options. Good lenders want to work with borrowers to solve problems, not create new ones. I hope you're right. This whole situation has me so stressed I can barely sleep. After the call ended, Ryan and I sat in our living room discussing the implications of Patricia's insurance crisis. Maya, if their insurance becomes a problem, it directly affects your investment. You have a legitimate business reason to get involved. I know, but if I get involved as their mortgage holder, I'll have to reveal my identity. There's no way to help them solve an insurance problem without them knowing who they're dealing with. Maybe this is the universe telling you it's time to come clean about everything. I walked to our small balcony and looked out over the neighborhood. The evening air was warm, and I could hear the sounds of families settling in for the night. Patricia's stress call had reminded me that homeownership came with constant responsibilities and potential crises. Even someone as composed and confident as my mother-in-law could be thrown off balance by unexpected challenges. Ryan, if I reveal myself as their mortgage holder right now, while they're dealing with an insurance crisis, it's going to look like I'm taking advantage of their vulnerability. Or it could look like you're stepping up to help when they need it most.
Your mother will never see it that way. She'll think I've been manipulating the situation from the beginning, lying to the family, and now swooping in during their crisis to reveal my power over them. Ryan joined me on the balcony. Maybe she'll realize that the woman she's been calling worthless has actually been protecting her family's financial interests without expecting any recognition or gratitude. His words gave me pause. I had been focused on the potential negative reactions to my revelation, but Ryan was suggesting a different interpretation of my actions. Instead of seeing the mortgage purchase as manipulative, Patricia might recognize it as protective. Instead of viewing my secrecy as deceptive, she might understand it as discretionary. What if she doesn't see it that way? Then we'll deal with the consequences. But Maya, we can't base our decisions on fear of how someone else might react. We have to do what we think is right and trust that the truth will ultimately serve everyone better than continued secrecy. Tuesday arrived with unseasonably warm weather, perfect conditions for a thorough property inspection. I found myself distracted at work, checking my phone regularly for updates from Ryan about how the inspection was proceeding. I had offered to take the day off to provide moral support, but Ryan had convinced me that my presence might raise questions about why I was so invested in his parents' insurance situation. The call came at 3:30 in the afternoon. Ryan's voice was tense as he delivered the news. Maya, the inspection found some issues. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to concern the insurance company. There's some minor foundation settling in the basement, a couple of loose shingles on the roof, and the electrical panel needs to be updated to current codes. How much are we talking about to fix everything? The contractor who looked at it with the inspector estimated about $15,000 to address all the concerns. Dad says they have maybe half that amount in their emergency fund, but using it all would leave them with no financial cushion. I closed my office door and sat down heavily in my chair. And if they don't fix the issues? The insurance company will either cancel their policy or increase their premiums by about $400 per month. Either way, it creates a mortgage problem because the lender requires adequate insurance coverage. The irony was perfect and terrible. As their mortgage holder, I had the authority to work with Patricia and Bob to find a solution that protected both their housing security and my investment. But exercising that authority would require revealing the secret that had been growing heavier every day. Ryan, I need to tell them. Tonight, are you sure you're ready for that conversation? I'm sure I can't avoid it any longer. Your parents are facing a legitimate financial crisis, and I'm the person who has the power to help them solve it. Keeping my identity secret at this point would be selfish and potentially harmful. Do you want me to be there when you tell them? I thought about it for a moment. Yes, but I want to talk to your mother first. One-on-one. This conversation needs to happen between the two of us before it becomes a family discussion. That evening, I called Patricia directly, something I had never done in 3 years of marriage to her son. Her voice was surprised but polite when she answered. Maya, hello, is everything all right? Ryan isn't hurt, is he? Ryan is fine. I'm calling because I heard about your insurance situation, and I think I might be able to help. That's very sweet of you, dear, but I don't see how. This is really a matter between Bob and me and the insurance company. Actually, Patricia, it's more complicated than that. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow morning? There's something important I need to discuss with you. There was a pause. Maya, you're being very mysterious. Is this about Ryan? Are you two having problems? No, we're not having problems. But there is something you need to know about your mortgage situation, and it's better if we discuss it in person. Another pause, longer this time. My mortgage situation. Maya, what could you possibly know about our mortgage? More than you might expect. Can we meet at Bean and Brew on Main Street tomorrow at 10 o'clock? I suppose so. But Maya, you're starting to worry me. What is this about? Tomorrow, Patricia. Everything will make sense tomorrow. After I hung up, I sat in our living room with Ryan, both of us understanding that the next 24 hours would fundamentally change the dynamics of our family relationships. There would be no going back after tomorrow's conversation. Are you nervous? Ryan asked. Terrified, I admitted. But also relieved. This secret has been eating at me for weeks. Whatever happens tomorrow, at least everything will be out in the open. What's the worst-case scenario? I considered the question seriously. The worst case is that your mother feels so betrayed and manipulated that she can't forgive me, and it creates a permanent rift in your family. And the best case? The best case is that she finally understands who I really am and what I'm capable of, and it leads to a relationship based on mutual respect instead of her condescension. Ryan pulled me closer on the couch. Either way, we'll face it together. I spent most of that night awake, rehearsing different versions of the conversation I would have with Patricia the next morning. How do you tell someone that you own their mortgage? How do you explain that you've been keeping a secret that affects their most fundamental security? How do you convince someone that your actions were motivated by business sense rather than malicious intent? By morning, I had decided on a direct approach. Patricia valued straight talk and clear communication, even when the message was difficult to hear. If I tried to soften the revelation or explain it away, she would see it as weakness or manipulation. Better to present the facts clearly and let her draw her own conclusions about my motivations and character. Bean and Brew was busy with the usual morning crowd of commuters grabbing coffee before work and retirees meeting friends for leisurely conversations. I arrived early and chose a table in the corner, where we could talk privately without being overheard. Patricia entered at exactly 10 o'clock, her punctuality reflecting the precision with which she approached most aspects of her life. She looked elegant as always, wearing a cream-colored blouse and navy slacks that spoke of both quality and careful maintenance. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, and her makeup was subtle but flawless. Patricia took pride in her appearance, viewing it as a reflection of her self-respect and social awareness. "Maya," she said, sliding the chair across from me. "You look tired. Are you sleeping well?" "Not really. I've had a lot on my mind lately." Patricia ordered a latte while I stuck with black coffee, my stomach too nervous to handle anything more complex. We made small talk for a few minutes about the weather and the busy coffee shop, both of us dancing around the real reason for our meeting. "Patricia," I said finally, "I need to tell you something about your mortgage situation that's going to surprise you." Her expression became more serious. "Maya, you're starting to worry me. What could you possibly know about our mortgage that we don't know ourselves?" I took a deep breath and met her eyes directly. "I know about it because I own it." Patricia stared at me blankly for several seconds, as if the words hadn't quite registered. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "I own your mortgage, Patricia. I purchased it from the bank 2 months ago as an investment property." Her face went through a series of expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally a dawning comprehension that brought color to her cheeks. "You own our mortgage?" "Yes. You're saying that when Bob and I make our monthly payment, that money goes to you?" "Yes." Patricia set down her latte cup with a sharp click against the saucer. "Maya, what you're telling me doesn't make sense. Mortgages aren't just things that people buy. They're held by banks and financial institutions." "Banks sell mortgages all the time, Patricia. It's a common investment vehicle for people with sufficient capital and understanding of the market. I work in finance, and I've been building an investment portfolio for several years." "But why would you buy our mortgage specifically? There must be thousands of mortgages available. Why target your husband's family?" This was the question I had been dreading, and also the one that would determine whether Patricia viewed my actions as business-focused or personally motivated. "Because I knew it was a solid investment. You and Bob have an excellent payment history, the property is well maintained, and located in a strong market, and the terms were favorable. From a purely financial perspective, it was exactly the kind of mortgage I was looking for." Patricia's eyes narrowed. "And from a personal perspective, I was tired of being treated like I didn't understand money or financial planning. You've spent 3 years assuming that I'm financially naive or irresponsible, when the reality is that I've been building wealth and making sophisticated investment decisions the entire time. So this is about proving a point to me. It's about protecting my family's financial future and building long-term wealth. The fact that it also demonstrates my capabilities is a secondary benefit." Patricia was quiet for a long moment, processing this new information. I could see her mind working through the implications, connecting dots between our previous conversations and this revelation. "The loan modification," she said suddenly. "The one that saved us $300 per month. That was you." "Yes. And Marcus Thompson, the lawyer who handled the paperwork. He's the attorney I work with for all my real estate investments." Patricia leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. "Maya, how much money do you have?" The question was direct, and somewhat rude by normal social standards, but given the circumstances, it felt relevant. "Enough to purchase your mortgage outright, and offer competitive modification terms that benefit both of us." "That's not an answer." Patricia, Ryan and I have built a portfolio worth more than both our annual salaries combined. We could pay off our student loans tomorrow if we wanted to, but we're keeping that money invested because it's earning better returns. We live modestly because we're focused on long-term financial security, not short-term lifestyle inflation. She was quiet again, and I could see her reassessing everything she thought she knew about me. The modest car, the small apartment, the careful spending habits she had interpreted as signs of financial struggle were actually evidence of financial discipline and strategic planning. Why are you telling me this now? Because you and Bob are facing an insurance crisis that could affect your mortgage, which means it affects my investment. As your mortgage holder, I have both the right and the responsibility to help you find a solution. What kind of solution? I can arrange for the necessary repairs to be completed and the costs added to your mortgage balance. Your monthly payment would increase slightly, but it would be far less than the insurance premium increase you're facing. And it would ensure that your insurance remains in place and affordable. Patricia stared at me for what felt like an eternity. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Maya, why didn't you tell us any of this before? Because I wanted to see if you could respect me for who I am, not what I have. Because I was tired of defending my worth to someone who had already decided I wasn't good enough for her son. Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time since I had known her, Patricia Martinez looked genuinely vulnerable. I've been a terrible mother-in-law to you, haven't I? Patricia's tears fell silently onto the cafe table as the weight of her revelation settled between us. Her perfectly composed exterior had cracked, revealing a vulnerability I had never seen before. The admission hung in the air like smoke, impossible to ignore or take back. Yes, I said quietly. You have been terrible to me. But Patricia, that's not why I'm telling you this. She reached into her purse for a tissue, her hands trembling slightly. Around us the morning crowd continued their conversations, oblivious to the family drama unfolding in our corner booth. The normalcy of the coffee shop felt surreal against the backdrop of this life-changing conversation. Then why reveal this now when you could have kept it secret forever? I leaned forward, choosing my words carefully. Because you're facing a real problem that I have the power to solve. Because keeping this secret while you and Bob struggle with insurance issues would make me complicit in letting you suffer unnecessarily. And because I'm tired of pretending to be less than I am. Patricia dabbed at her eyes, trying to maintain some dignity while processing the complete upheaval of her understanding about me. Maya, I don't even know where to begin. The things I've said about you, the assumptions I've made. I feel like such a fool. You're not a fool, Patricia. You made judgments based on incomplete information. But you also never tried to get complete information. You decided who I was on the first day we met, and never allowed that perception to evolve. She nodded slowly, acknowledging the truth in my words. I thought you were taking advantage of Ryan's good nature. I thought he was supporting you financially and that you were content to let him do it. I worried that he would wake up one day and resent being with someone who couldn't contribute equally to the relationship. And now I realize that you've probably been supporting him more than he's been supporting you. And that I've been criticizing the very qualities that make you an exceptional partner for my son. The shift in Patricia's perspective was happening faster than I had expected. I had prepared for anger, denial, or accusations of manipulation. I hadn't prepared for immediate acceptance and self-reflection. Patricia, I need you to understand something. I didn't buy your mortgage to hurt you, or gain power over you. I bought it because it was a sound investment that happened to involve people I care about. The fact that it also proved a point about my capabilities was a bonus, not the primary motivation. But you could have told us immediately. You could have explained what you were doing instead of letting us find out this way. Would you have believed me? If I had come to you 2 months ago and said I was purchasing your mortgage as part of my investment portfolio, would you have taken me seriously? Or would you have assumed Ryan was somehow financing it, or that I was exaggerating my financial position? Patricia was quiet for a long moment, considering the hypothetical scenario. I probably would have been skeptical, she admitted. I might have thought you were trying to impress me or that there was some detail you weren't sharing. Exactly, you needed to experience my financial competence before you could accept it. The loan modification you've been praising, the professional handling of your refinancing inquiry, the quick response to your insurance crisis, these weren't abstract concepts. They were concrete demonstrations of how I handle financial responsibilities.
And I praised all of it without knowing it was you. You praised it because it was good work, Patricia. The fact that it came from someone you had dismissed as financially naive doesn't change the quality of what you experienced. She picked up her latte with steadier hands, taking a small sip while she organized her thoughts. Maya, what happens now? With the mortgage, with our family, with everything? That depends largely on you. From a business perspective, nothing has to change. You continue making your payments, I continue earning returns on my investment. Your insurance problem gets solved, and everyone benefits from the arrangement. And from a personal perspective, I hope this leads to a more honest relationship between us. I hope you can see me as I actually am instead of who you assumed I was. And I hope we can build something better than what we've had. Patricia set down her cup and looked directly at me. Maya, I owe you an enormous apology. Not just for the things I've said recently, but for 3 years of treating you like you weren't good enough for my family. I was wrong about everything. The apology felt genuine, but I also knew that real change would take time to develop. Patricia's attitudes had been shaped by years of assumptions and social conditioning. One conversation, even a dramatic one, wouldn't immediately transform our relationship. Thank you for saying that. But Patricia, apologizing is just the first step. If you want our relationship to improve, you'll need to demonstrate that you mean it through your actions going forward. What kind of actions? Stop making comments about my background or my family. Stop suggesting improvements to my appearance or lifestyle. Stop treating my career like a hobby and my financial decisions like guesswork. Start including me in family conversations as an equal participant rather than a reluctant addition. She nodded with each point I raised. You're right, I've been doing all of those things, haven't I? Yes, you have. And it's made every family gathering feel like a performance where I have to prove I deserve to be there. Patricia's face crumpled again. Maya, I'm so sorry. I thought I was being helpful, giving guidance to someone who seemed lost or overwhelmed. I didn't realize I was being cruel. Intent matters, Patricia, but impact matters more. Your guidance felt like criticism. Your suggestions felt like rejections of who I am. We sat in silence for several minutes, both of us processing the emotional weight of this conversation. I felt drained, but also relieved. The secret that had been growing heavier every day was finally out in the open, and Patricia's reaction was more positive than I had dared to hope. Maya, what do you need from me now? Besides changing my behavior going forward, what can I do to begin making amends for how I've treated you? The question surprised me. I had expected defensiveness or attempts to justify her past behavior. Instead, Patricia seemed genuinely committed to repairing the damage she had caused. I need you to tell Bob and Ryan about this conversation. I need you to explain to them what you've learned about me and how you plan to change your approach to our relationship. And I need you to mean it, not just say it. Of course, when would you like to have that conversation? Tonight, at your house. I think it's important that we address this as a family, in the place where most of our conflicts have occurred. Patricia nodded. I'll call Bob and ask him to be home early. And Maya, I want you to know that I'm grateful you're willing to work with me on this. I wouldn't blame you if you decided our relationship was beyond repair. It's not beyond repair, Patricia, but it's going to require genuine effort from both of us. As we prepared to leave the cafe, Patricia reached across the table and touched my hand gently. Maya, can I ask you something personal? Of course, how long have you been building this financial portfolio? When did you start making the kind of money that allowed you to purchase mortgages? I've been building it systematically since I graduated from college 7 years ago. My starting salary wasn't huge, but I lived below my means and invested aggressively. The mortgage purchase was only possible because of years of disciplined saving and smart investment choices. And Ryan knows all of this. He knows now. I shared the complete picture with him recently, but for most of our relationship, he knew I was good with money without understanding the full scope of what I was building. Patricia shook her head slowly. I've been so blind. All this time, I was worried about Ryan's financial future, never realizing that he had married someone who was securing it more effectively than I ever could have imagined. Ryan's financial future was never in jeopardy because of me, Patricia. If anything, marrying me was the best financial decision he ever made. As we walked out of Bean and Brew together, I felt like I was walking beside a different person than the one I had entered with. Patricia's entire demeanor had shifted from defensive superiority to humble recognition. Whether this change would last remained to be seen, but for the first time in 3 years I felt hopeful about the possibility of a genuine relationship with my mother-in-law. The rest of the day passed slowly as I waited for the evening family meeting. I called Ryan to update him on the coffee conversation and Patricia's reaction. She cried. Ryan sounded surprised. My mother never cries, especially not in public. She was genuinely shocked and remorseful. But Ryan, we need to be cautious about assuming this one conversation has solved everything. Real change takes time, and Patricia has years of ingrained attitudes to overcome. But it's a start. It's definitely a start. The question is whether she can sustain this new perspective when the emotional impact of today's revelation wears off. That evening, Ryan and I arrived at 1247 Maple Grove Drive to find Patricia and Bob waiting for us in the living room. Patricia had clearly been crying again, and Bob looked confused and concerned. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation and unresolved tension. Mom called me at work and said we needed to have an urgent family meeting, Bob said as we settled into the familiar seating arrangement. She wouldn't tell me what it was about, just that it involved Maya and some kind of financial situation. Patricia looked at me nervously. Maya, would you like to explain, or should I? You can start, Patricia, but I want Bob and Ryan to hear the complete story. Patricia took a deep breath and turned to her husband. Bob, Maya owns our mortgage. Bob's reaction was similar to Patricia's initial response. Confusion, followed by disbelief, followed by a slow dawning of comprehension. She owns our mortgage. What does that mean? Exactly. It means that when we make our monthly payment, the money goes to Maya instead of to a bank. She purchased our mortgage 2 months ago as an investment. Bob looked at me with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. Maya, is this true? Yes, it's true. I bought your mortgage from the bank when it came up for sale. It's a standard investment practice, and your mortgage was exactly the type of property I was looking for. And you didn't tell us. No, I didn't. There was no legal requirement to inform you, and I wasn't sure how you would react to the information. Bob was processing this revelation more calmly than either Patricia or Ryan had. As an engineer, he approached problems systematically, gathering information before forming conclusions. Maya, help me understand the financial aspects of this. You purchased our mortgage outright, with your own money. Yes, I've been building an investment portfolio for several years, and I had sufficient capital to make the purchase. And the loan modification we received, the one that lowered our interest rate, that was me offering you better terms to keep you as borrowers, instead of losing you to a refinance with another company. Bob leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. Maya, that modification is saving us over $3,000 per year. You could have maintained the original terms and earned higher returns on your investment. I could have, but offering competitive terms was good business practice. It benefits both of us. Patricia spoke up. Bob, there's more. Maya has been managing sophisticated investments for years. She and Ryan have built significant wealth, and I never knew because I was too busy making assumptions about her financial situation. Bob turned to Ryan. Son, did you know about this? I knew Maya was good with money, but I didn't understand the full scope of her investments until recently. Dad, Maya has been quietly building our financial security while I was coasting along thinking everything would work out fine. And the insurance situation we're dealing with. The repairs we need to make. I answered this question directly. As your mortgage holder, I can arrange for the repairs to be completed and add the cost to your mortgage balance. Your monthly payment would increase slightly, but it would be much less expensive than paying for the repairs outright or accepting higher insurance premiums. Bob was quiet for several minutes, processing all of this information. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with something that sounded like admiration. Maya, I have to say, this is impressive. You've been thinking strategically about financial security in ways that most people our age haven't mastered. And you've done it while maintaining a relationship with our family, even when that relationship was challenging. Patricia looked at her husband with surprise. You're not upset about this. Why would I be upset? Maya made a smart investment that happens to benefit our family. She offered us better loan terms than we could have gotten elsewhere, and she's willing to help us solve our insurance problem. From where I sit, we're fortunate to have someone this financially sophisticated looking out for our interests. Ryan smiled for the first time all evening. Dad, that's exactly what I was trying to tell Mom. Maya isn't a burden on our family. She's an asset. Patricia looked around the room at the three men in her life, all of whom were viewing this revelation more positively than she had initially. I suppose I'm the only one who was completely blind to Maya's capabilities. Patricia, I said gently, you weren't blind. You just made assumptions based on incomplete information. But you're also the only one who actively criticized my financial choices and questioned my worth as Ryan's partner. She nodded sadly, and I was wrong about everything. The conversation continued for another hour, as we worked through the practical implications of the mortgage arrangement and the emotional implications of Patricia's changed understanding. Bob was genuinely curious about my investment strategies and asked detailed questions about portfolio management and real estate investing. Ryan seemed relieved that the secret was finally out in the open and that his parents were reacting reasonably well. Patricia remained subdued throughout the discussion, clearly still processing the complete reversal of her assumptions about me. When the evening wound down, she walked Ryan and me to the door. Maya, she said quietly, I want you to know that I understand if it takes time for you to trust that I've really changed. I have 3 years of terrible behavior to make up for. Change is a process, Patricia, not an event. I'm willing to work on our relationship if you are. I am. And Maya, thank you for helping us with the insurance situation. You didn't have to do that. Actually, I did have to do it. As your mortgage holder, protecting the property is protecting my investment, but you're welcome. 2 weeks later, the repairs to Patricia and Bob's house were completed. Their insurance was renewed at the original premium rates, and their monthly mortgage payment had increased by only $127 to cover the additional amount they owed. Patricia called me personally to thank me for handling the situation so efficiently and professionally. Maya, I wanted you to know that Bob and I are extremely grateful for how you managed everything. Marcus Thompson said he's never seen a mortgage holder respond so quickly to solve a borrower's problem. I'm glad it worked out well for everyone. It did more than work out well. You saved us thousands of dollars and weeks of stress. And Maya, I want to apologize again for how I treated you before. I've been thinking about it constantly, and I'm ashamed of the person I was. The apology still felt genuine, but I was waiting to see whether Patricia's changed attitude would sustain itself over time. It was easy to be remorseful immediately after a dramatic revelation, but harder to maintain new behaviors when the emotional impact faded. Patricia, I appreciate the apology, but the real test will be how we interact going forward. I understand, and I hope you'll be patient with me as I learn to do better. The following Sunday's family dinner felt different from the moment Ryan and I walked through the door. Patricia greeted us both warmly, her smile reaching her eyes in a way I hadn't seen before. She had prepared my favorite side dish without being asked, and she seated me next to Ryan rather than at the far end of the table. Maya, she said during the meal, Bob told me you have experience with investment planning. Would you be willing to give us some advice about our retirement accounts? We've been thinking about diversifying beyond our current mix. The request was a complete reversal from her previous dismissal of my financial expertise. More importantly, it was asked with genuine respect and interest rather than condescending politeness. I'd be happy to take a look at your portfolio and share some thoughts. Retirement planning is one of my specialties. Wonderful, maybe next weekend we could sit down and go over everything. Ryan caught my eye across the table, and I could see his relief at the change dynamic. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like I was being included in the family conversation as an equal participant rather than a reluctant addition. The evening continued in this new pattern, with Patricia asking about my work, complimenting my insights, and treating me with the kind of respect she had always shown to other family members. It felt almost surreal, after years of subtle criticism and dismissal. As we prepared to leave, Patricia pulled me aside privately. Maya, I know I have a lot of work to do to rebuild your trust in me, but I want you to know that having this conversation with you has been one of the most important learning experiences of my life. How so? I realized that I was so focused on protecting Ryan from what I thought was a bad choice, that I never actually got to know the person he had chosen. I was fighting against someone who existed only in my imagination. And now,
Now I see that Ryan made an extraordinary choice. He found someone who not only loves him, but has been quietly building the foundation for a secure and prosperous future together. I couldn't have asked for a better daughter-in-law. The words I had waited 3 years to hear were finally spoken, and they felt genuine rather than obligatory. Patricia's transformation seemed real, though I knew that sustaining it would require ongoing effort from both of us. Over the following months, Patricia made consistent efforts to demonstrate her changed attitude toward me. She asked for my advice on financial decisions, included me in family planning discussions, and stopped making subtle criticisms about my background or lifestyle choices. More importantly, she began defending me when other family members or friends made comments that reflected the kind of judgmental attitudes she had previously expressed. At a family barbecue in late summer, I overheard Patricia talking to her sister Carol about Ryan's and my relationship. "Carol, I owe Maya an enormous apology. I spent 3 years thinking she wasn't good enough for Ryan, when the truth is that Ryan was incredibly lucky to find someone so intelligent and capable. Really, I thought you were concerned about her background and financial situation. I was completely wrong about both. Maya has been building wealth and making sophisticated financial decisions while I was busy criticizing her for being careful with money. She's actually been securing Ryan's future more effectively than I ever could have imagined. That's quite a change in perspective. It's what happens when you finally pay attention to reality instead of your own prejudices." Hearing Patricia defend me to someone who had witnessed her previous criticisms felt like a validation of the genuine nature of her transformation. She wasn't just being polite to my face. She was actively working to correct the negative impressions she had created about me with other people. The mortgage arrangement continued smoothly, with Patricia and Bob making their payments consistently and our family relationships improving dramatically. What had started as a business transaction designed to prove a point had evolved into the foundation for a genuinely positive relationship with my mother-in-law. 6 months after our coffee shop revelation, Patricia and Bob invited Ryan and me over for a special dinner. When we arrived, we found the dining room set with the good china and candles, as if we were celebrating a holiday. "What's the occasion?" Ryan asked. Patricia smiled warmly. "The occasion is gratitude. Bob and I wanted to properly thank Maya for everything she's done for our family." "Patricia, you don't need to thank me for managing a business investment." "Yes, I do. Because you've done so much more than manage an investment. You've helped us solve problems, saved us money, and most importantly, you've been patient with me while I learned to see you clearly." Bob raised his wine glass. "To Maya, who has been a blessing to our family in ways we were too blind to recognize." Patricia raised her glass as well. "To Maya, the daughter-in-law I wish I had appreciated from the beginning." Ryan raised his glass with tears in his eyes. "To Maya, the woman who saved our family's finances and our family's relationships." As we toasted, I felt a completeness that had been missing from our family gatherings for 3 years. The woman who had once called me worthless was now celebrating my contributions to the family. The secret that had seemed like a burden had become the catalyst for genuine understanding and respect. "Thank you all," I said, raising my own glass. "To families that grow stronger through honesty and second chances." That night, as Ryan and I drove home through the familiar streets of Riverside Hills, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this point. The mortgage purchase that had started as a business decision and a personal statement had evolved into something much more meaningful. It had forced all of us to confront our assumptions, communicate more honestly, and build relationships based on reality rather than perception. "Maya," Ryan said as we pulled into our apartment complex, "I need to tell you something." "What's that?" "I'm proud of you, not just for the financial success, but for how you handled everything with my mother. You could have been vindictive or cruel when you revealed the truth. Instead, you gave her the opportunity to grow and change." She deserved that opportunity, Ryan. People aren't their worst moments. Maybe not, but you're definitely your best moments. And watching you navigate this situation with such grace and intelligence has made me fall in love with you all over again. As we climbed the stairs to our apartment, I realized that the modest living space that Patricia had once criticized no longer felt like a compromise or a temporary arrangement. It felt like home, a place we had chosen as part of a larger financial strategy that was now bearing fruit in ways we had never expected. The next morning brought a call from Marcus Thompson with news that would add another layer to our family's financial story. Maya, I've been contacted by another family in Riverside Hills, who are facing a situation similar to what Patricia and Bob experienced. They're looking for a private mortgage holder who can offer flexible terms and responsive service. Would you be interested in expanding your real estate investment portfolio? I looked around our apartment, thinking about the success of our first mortgage investment and the positive changes it had brought to our family relationships. Tell me more about the property and the borrowers. It's a young couple with excellent credit but limited savings for a traditional down payment. They're both professionals with steady incomes, but they're being priced out of the current market by investor competition. They're looking for someone who would work with them as partners rather than just profit centers. The situation reminded me of Ryan and my own position when we had first started building our life together. We had been fortunate to have steady incomes and financial discipline, but the traditional banking system hadn't always been designed to help young professionals transition from renters to homeowners. What kind of terms are they looking for? Something more flexible than conventional mortgages but still commercially reasonable. They're willing to pay a fair interest rate in exchange for working with someone who understands their situation and won't penalize them for being young and ambitious rather than established and wealthy. I found myself intrigued by the possibility of helping another family achieve homeownership while building our own investment portfolio. The experience with Patricia and Bob had taught me that private mortgage holding could be more than just a financial transaction. It could be a way to support other people's dreams while building our own security. Send me the details, Marcus. I'd like to review their application and property information. Excellent. I think you'll find this couple very impressive. They remind me a lot of you and Ryan when you were first starting out. After ending the call, I sat in our kitchen thinking about how much had changed since I had first decided to purchase Patricia's mortgage. What had started as a way to prove my financial competence had evolved into a broader understanding of how money could be used, not just to build wealth, but to build relationships and create opportunities for other people. Ryan emerged from the bedroom, dressed for work and reaching for his coffee mug. Who was on the phone? Marcus. He has another mortgage opportunity, a young couple who needs flexible financing to buy their first home. Ryan paused with his coffee halfway to his lips. Are you thinking about expanding into more real estate investing? I'm thinking about it. The mortgage with your parents has been successful both financially and personally. Maybe we should consider helping other families while building our portfolio. That sounds like you're thinking about this as more than just investment returns. Maybe I am. Maybe there's something powerful about using financial success to create opportunities for other people rather than just accumulating wealth for its own sake. Ryan set down his coffee and kissed me goodbye. That sounds like the woman I married. The one who sees money as a tool for building better lives, rather than just bigger bank accounts. As Ryan left for work, I found myself thinking about Patricia's transformation and what it meant for our family's future. The woman who had once dismissed me as worthless had learned to see me as valuable not just for my financial contributions, but for my character and judgment. The relationship we had built through honesty and mutual respect felt stronger than anything we could have achieved through pretense or avoidance. The mortgage arrangement that had started as a business transaction had become a foundation for genuine family connection. And now, with the possibility of expanding into more private lending, I was beginning to see how financial success could be used to create positive change in other people's lives as well. Looking around our modest apartment one more time, I realized that this space no longer felt like a compromise we were tolerating until we could afford something better. It felt like the launching pad for a life we were building intentionally, with careful planning and clear values guiding our decisions. Patricia's monthly mortgage payment would arrive in a few days, a transaction that had once felt like a secret victory, but now felt like a partnership between family members who had learned to respect and support each other. The woman who had called me worthless had discovered that I owned her mortgage, but more importantly, she had discovered that worth couldn't be measured by appearances or assumptions. And I had discovered that proving my worth had been less important than building relationships based on truth, respect, and the understanding that families grow stronger when they face reality together, rather than hiding behind comfortable illusions. The law office of Thompson and Associates felt familiar now, like a second home where life-changing decisions were made, with careful consideration and professional precision. Marcus Thompson spread the documents across his mahogany desk, his expression reflecting the satisfaction of someone who had witnessed a remarkable transformation over the past 18 months. Maya, I have to say, what you've built here is extraordinary. 3 mortgage properties, all performing exceptionally well, all with borrowers who speak of you in glowing terms. You've created something that goes far beyond traditional investment returns. I reviewed the portfolio summary he had prepared. The Martinez mortgage remained the cornerstone of our real estate investments, with Patricia and Bob continuing to make their payments punctually while maintaining their beautifully renovated home. The second property, owned by Sarah and James Mitchell, a young teacher and engineer couple, had been our first expansion into helping first-time homebuyers achieve their dreams. The third, acquired just 6 months ago, belonged to Carlos and Maria Santos, immigrants who had struggled to find traditional financing despite their excellent business income from their family restaurant. The financial returns speak for themselves, Marcus continued, but the personal satisfaction you've described from these relationships suggests you've found something more valuable than mere profit. He was right. Each mortgage represented not just an investment, but a partnership with families who were building their lives with the same intentional planning that Ryan and I had embraced. The monthly payments that arrived in our account carried with them stories of birthday parties and backyards we had helped them secure, holiday gatherings in homes they might never have owned without flexible financing, and dreams that were becoming reality through our willingness to see beyond traditional banking requirements. Marcus, I want to expand again, but this time I want to do something bigger. His eyebrows raised with interest. What did you have in mind? I want to establish a private lending fund specifically for families who don't fit traditional mortgage profiles. People with good incomes and strong character but unusual circumstances that make conventional banks nervous. I want to formalize what we've been doing and create a sustainable way to help more families while building long-term wealth. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting from curiosity to excitement. Maya, that's not just a business idea, that's a mission. Are you thinking about something like a family foundation or a private investment fund? I'm thinking about something that bridges both concepts. A fund that generates solid returns for investors while providing opportunities for families who deserve a chance to build equity and stability. We spent the next 2 hours outlining the legal structure, capital requirements, and operational framework for what would eventually become the Chen Martinez Family Lending Fund. The name itself represented the journey that had brought us to this point, honoring both my commitment to financial innovation and the family relationships that had been transformed through honest communication and mutual respect. Maya, this fund could help dozens of families over the next decade. With your track record and reputation in the financial community, I believe you could attract significant investment capital from other professionals who want to combine social impact with financial returns. The idea energized me in a way that
Traditional investments never had. Building wealth for its own sake had always felt somewhat empty, but using financial success to create opportunities for other people felt like a calling rather than just a career strategy. There's one more thing, Marcus. I want Patricia Martinez to be one of the founding investors in the fund. His surprise was evident. Your mother-in-law? The woman whose mortgage started this whole journey. The same woman who has become one of my strongest supporters and most trusted advisors. Patricia has learned more about real estate investing over the past year than most people learn in a lifetime. She understands the personal side of these transactions in ways that traditional investors never could. The transformation in my relationship with Patricia had been the most unexpected benefit of our mortgage arrangement. What had started as a business transaction designed to prove a point had evolved into a genuine partnership built on mutual respect and shared values. Patricia had thrown herself into learning about real estate investing with the same enthusiasm she had once directed toward criticizing my financial choices. She's expressed interest in becoming an investor. She's been asking about opportunities to expand her own portfolio beyond traditional retirement accounts. Patricia and Bob have significant savings and they're looking for ways to generate income while supporting causes they believe in. This fund would allow them to earn returns while helping other families achieve the same homeownership stability they've enjoyed. Marcus made notes as we discussed the potential investor profile for the fund. Maya, I think you're onto something significant here. A private lending fund with a social mission backed by investors who understand the personal impact of homeownership could fill a real gap in the current market. Exactly. Traditional banks see risk where we see opportunity. They see non-standard employment or immigration status as red flags, while we see hardworking families who deserve a chance to build equity and stability. As we concluded the meeting, Marcus gathered the documents that would begin the legal process of establishing the fund. Maya, when you first walked into this office to purchase the Martinez mortgage, did you envision it leading to something like this? I thought about his question as we shook hands and scheduled our next meeting. Honestly, no. I thought I was making a smart investment that would also prove a point about my capabilities. I never imagined it would lead to rebuilding my relationship with Patricia, expanding into multiple properties, or creating a fund that could help dozens of families. Sometimes the best journeys are the ones we don't plan. Driving home from the law office, I reflected on the remarkable chain of events that had brought us to this point. The woman who had once called me worthless was now preparing to invest her own money in a fund I was creating. The husband who had once dismissed my financial judgment was now seeking my advice on major decisions. The family dinners that had once felt like endurance tests had become genuine celebrations of our shared successes and mutual support. That evening, Ryan and I hosted Patricia and Bob for dinner in our apartment, a reversal of the traditional Sunday gathering that reflected the evolution in our family dynamics. Patricia had requested the opportunity to cook in our small kitchen, claiming she wanted to experience how we managed to create such delicious meals in such a compact space. Maya, I have to admit, cooking in this kitchen has been enlightening, Patricia said as she prepared her famous apple pie using our modest oven. You've been creating wonderful meals under conditions that would challenge even experienced cooks. I'm impressed by your resourcefulness. The comment would have been condescending 18 months ago, but now it carried genuine admiration. Patricia had learned to see our modest living situation as a strategic choice rather than a limitation, understanding that our deliberate lifestyle enabled the investment strategies that were building long-term wealth. We've learned to be creative with limited space, I replied. But honestly, some of our best meals have happened around this table. Bob emerged from our small living room where he had been reviewing the fund prospectus I had prepared. Maya, this lending fund concept is brilliant. The market research you've included demonstrates a real need for flexible financing options, and your track record with our mortgage and the other properties proves you can execute this vision successfully. Ryan joined the conversation as we gathered around our dining table, which barely accommodated four-place settings but somehow felt more intimate and welcoming than Patricia's formal dining room had ever been. Maya, I've been thinking about the fund concept and I want to contribute more than just financial investment, he said. My marketing background could be valuable for developing materials that help potential borrowers understand how the fund works and what makes it different from traditional lending. The idea of Ryan becoming actively involved in our real estate ventures represented another significant evolution in our relationship. For years he had been content to let me handle financial planning while he focused on his marketing career. Now he was proposing to combine our professional skills in service of a shared mission. Ryan, that's a wonderful idea. Most private lending operations are terrible at communication because they're designed by financial professionals who understand numbers but struggle to explain concepts in accessible terms. Patricia raised her wine glass, a gesture that had become her signature way of marking important family moments. I want to propose a toast to new partnerships and expanded opportunities. To the Martinez Family Lending Fund, Bob added, raising his own glass. To proving that families can achieve more together than any of us could accomplish alone, Ryan contributed. To second chances and the courage to see people clearly, I concluded. As we toasted our expanding partnership, I felt a profound gratitude for the journey that had brought us to this point. The mortgage purchase that had started as a defensive response to Patricia's criticism had become the foundation for genuine family collaboration and shared purpose. Maya, Patricia said as we began clearing the dinner dishes, I want you to know that I consider you one of the wisest people I've ever known. Not just about money, but about relationships and the importance of giving people opportunities to grow and change. Thank you, Patricia. That means a lot coming from you. I also want to apologize again for how long it took me to see who you really are. I wasted 3 years being suspicious of someone who was actually the answer to prayers I didn't even know I was praying. What kind of prayers? Prayers that Ryan would find someone who would love him completely and build a secure future with him. Prayers that our family would be blessed with someone who understood both the value of money and the importance of using it wisely. Prayers that I would be fortunate enough to have a daughter-in-law who could teach me things I needed to learn about myself. Her words brought tears to my eyes, not because they were unexpected but because they represented such a complete transformation from the woman who had once questioned my worth at every family gathering. Patricia, you've taught me things too. You've shown me that people can change when they're given accurate information and the space to process it. You've demonstrated that pride doesn't have to prevent growth, and that admitting mistakes can actually make relationships stronger. Bob, who had been quietly listening to our exchange, spoke up from his position at our small sink. Patricia, do you remember what you said when Maya first started dating Ryan? Unfortunately, yes.
I said I was worried he was making a mistake. And what would you say now? Patricia looked at me with an expression of profound affection and respect. Now I would say that Ryan made the best decision of his life, and our family won the lottery when Maya chose to build her future with us. The following weeks were filled with the detailed work of establishing the lending fund. Marcus handled the legal documentation while I developed the underwriting criteria and operational procedures. Ryan created marketing materials that explained our approach in language that felt welcoming rather than intimidating. Patricia and Bob completed their investor paperwork and began recommending the fund to friends who shared their values about supporting hardworking families. Our first official borrower under the fund structure was Elena Rodriguez, a single mother who worked as a nurse practitioner but couldn't qualify for traditional financing because her income included substantial overtime pay that banks considered unreliable. Elena's situation reminded me of my own early career when my income was strong but unconventional enough to make traditional lenders nervous. Maya, I can't thank you enough for this opportunity, Elena said as we met at Marcus's office to finalize her mortgage documents. I've been renting for 8 years, watching my monthly payments build equity for other people while my daughter and I moved from apartment to apartment. This house will be the first stable home she's ever known. Elena's gratitude was humbling, but it also reinforced my conviction that the fund was addressing a real need in our community. Traditional banks saw her overtime income as a risk factor, while we saw it as evidence of her dedication to providing for her family and her willingness to work extra hours to achieve her goals. Elena, we're honored to be part of helping you and your daughter build stability and equity. This is exactly the kind of situation the fund was designed to address. As Elena signed the final documents, I thought about the journey that had brought us to this moment. 18 months ago, I had been sitting in Marcus's office signing documents to purchase Patricia's mortgage, motivated by frustration and a desire to prove my financial competence. Now I was sitting in the same office, watching a hardworking mother secure homeownership for herself and her daughter through a fund that had grown out of that original defensive decision. The irony was not lost on me that Patricia's criticism, which had once felt so hurtful and dismissive, had ultimately motivated me to create something that was helping multiple families achieve their dreams while building substantial wealth for our investors. 2 months later, the fund had grown to include 6 investor families and was providing financing for 4 home purchases. Each transaction brought its own story of dreams deferred and finally realized, of families who had been overlooked by traditional systems but were thriving under our more flexible approach. Patricia had become the fund's most enthusiastic advocate, attending local community meetings to explain how private lending could help families who felt excluded from homeownership opportunities. Her transformation from someone who had questioned my financial judgment to someone who was actively promoting my innovations felt like a complete vindication of the journey we had taken together. Maya, I've been thinking about our family's evolution over the past year and a half, Patricia said during one of our now regular coffee meetings at Bean and Brew. Do you realize that you've not only changed my understanding of you, but you've changed my understanding of what's possible when people choose to see beyond surface appearances? How so? Every family we've helped through the fund has been dismissed by someone else as too risky or unconventional. Elena was rejected by 3 banks before we gave her a chance. Carlos and Maria were told that their restaurant income was too unpredictable. Sarah and James were penalized for being young and having student loans. But all of them are thriving as homeowners because someone was willing to look beyond traditional criteria. It's amazing how often conventional wisdom turns out to be conventional prejudice. Exactly. And Maya, I realized that I was guilty of the same kind of thinking when I first met you. I looked at your background, your modest lifestyle, your careful spending habits, and I made assumptions that were completely wrong. But you were willing to change your mind when presented with new information. It took me too long though. And I hurt you in the process of protecting assumptions that were never based on reality. Patricia's ongoing remorse about her initial treatment of me had become almost excessive, but I understood that acknowledging her mistakes was part of her process of ensuring she never repeated them. Patricia, we can't change the past, but we can learn from it. And honestly, if you had been supportive of me from the beginning, I might never have been motivated to purchase your mortgage, which means we might never have discovered this opportunity to work together. So you're saying my terrible behavior inadvertently led to good outcomes? I'm saying that people can grow from difficult experiences, and sometimes the greatest challenges lead to the most meaningful opportunities. Our conversation was interrupted by a call from Marcus with news that would add another dimension to our fund's impact. Maya, I just received a call from the Riverside Hills Community Development Council. They've heard about your lending fund and they want to discuss a potential partnership. What kind of partnership? They're working on a neighborhood revitalization project that involves helping longtime residents avoid displacement while encouraging responsible development. Your fund's approach to flexible lending could be exactly what they need to help families stay in their homes while property values increase. The idea of partnering with community organizations to prevent displacement while supporting responsible development felt like a natural evolution of our mission. Too often, neighborhood improvement meant that longtime residents were priced out by rising property values and changing lending requirements. Marcus scheduled a meeting with them. This sounds like an opportunity to expand our impact while staying true to our core values. That evening, I shared the community partnership possibility with Ryan, Patricia, and Bob during our weekly family dinner, which had become a planning session for fund operations as much as a social gathering. Maya, this partnership could help us scale the fund's impact beyond individual families to entire neighborhoods, Ryan said, his marketing background evident in his enthusiasm for the broader reach. Patricia nodded thoughtfully. And it addresses one of my concerns about gentrification in our own neighborhood. I've been worried about longtime residents being forced out as property values rise, but this fund could help them benefit from improvement rather than being victimized by it. Bob, ever practical, asked the essential questions. What would be the financial implications of this partnership? Would we be taking on additional risk or simply expanding our current approach? Based on Marcus's initial description, it sounds like we would be expanding our current approach to serve families who are facing displacement pressure rather than families who are seeking initial homeownership. The underwriting would be similar, but the social impact would be different. Our discussion continued late into the evening as we explored the possibilities and challenges of community partnership. The lending fund that had started as a way to formalize our private mortgage activities was evolving into a comprehensive tool for supporting housing stability and wealth building across different types of family situations. 6 months later, the Chen Martinez Family Lending Fund had grown to include 12 investor families and had provided financing for 15 home purchases, including 8 transactions that prevented displacement in the Riverside Hills revitalization area. The fund's success had attracted attention from other communities facing similar challenges, and we were fielding inquiries about replicating our model in different markets. Maya, I think it's time to consider expanding beyond Riverside Hills, Patricia suggested during our monthly investor meeting, which we now held in the community center rather than around someone's dining room table. We've proven that this model works, and there are families in other communities who could benefit from the same approach. The suggestion represented a level of ambition that would have seemed impossible when Patricia and I were sitting in Bean and Brew 18 months earlier, working through the aftermath of her discovery that I owned her mortgage. Patricia, expanding to other markets would require additional capital and operational complexity. Are our current investors ready for that level of growth? Maya, let me ask you something, Bob interjected. When you first purchased our mortgage, did you envision it leading to a fund that would help dozens of families and prevent neighborhood displacement? Honestly, no. I thought I was making a smart investment that would also prove a point about my capabilities. And now I see that the best business decisions are the ones that create value for everyone involved, not just the person making the investment. Patricia smiled at my response. That's exactly why we should expand Maya. This fund isn't just generating financial returns, it's proving that capitalism can be a tool for social good when it's guided by the right values. Ryan, who had been quietly taking notes throughout our discussion, looked up with an expression of excitement. Maya, what if we approached expansion strategically? Instead of trying to grow everywhere at once, we could partner with one additional community that has similar demographics and challenges to Riverside Hills. We could test our ability to replicate the model before committing to larger-scale growth. The suggestion felt wise and manageable. We had learned that successful lending required deep understanding of local conditions and community relationships. Attempting to expand too quickly could compromise the personal attention and flexibility that made our approach effective. Ryan, that makes sense. Marcus, could you research comparable communities that might benefit from our approach? Absolutely. I'll identify 3 potential markets and develop preliminary assessments of opportunities and challenges in each one. As our meeting concluded, I reflected on the remarkable evolution of what had started as a defensive response to family criticism. The mortgage purchase that had once felt like a secret weapon against Patricia's dismissiveness had become the foundation for a thriving business that was helping multiple families achieve stability and prosperity. Maya, Patricia said as we gathered our materials and prepared to leave the community center, I want you to know that working with you on this fund has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. even more rewarding than criticizing my financial choices. I asked with a smile. She laughed, a sound that carried both embarrassment and genuine joy. Especially more rewarding than that. Maya, I've learned more about business, investing, and social responsibility from working with you than I learned in decades of traditional financial planning. And I've learned that the best partnerships are built on honesty, mutual respect, and shared commitment to creating value for other people. Bob joined our conversation as we walked toward the parking lot. Maya, Patricia, I want to say something about what this fund has meant for our family relationships. We stopped walking and turned our attention to Bob, who rarely initiated serious conversations but always contributed wisdom when he chose to speak. When Maya first told us she owned our mortgage, I was impressed by her financial sophistication but worried about how the revelation would affect our family dynamics. I wondered if we would be able to maintain genuine relationships when money and business interests were involved. And now, Patricia asked, now I realize that the money was never the real issue. The real issue was whether we could communicate honestly with each other and build relationships based on who we actually are rather than who we assumed each other to be. His words captured something essential about our journey together. The mortgage arrangement had created a framework for honest communication, but the real transformation had come through our willingness to see beyond our initial assumptions and build something better together. Bob, that's beautifully put, I said. The fund has been successful because all of us were willing to admit when we were wrong and work together towards something bigger than any of us could achieve alone. 1 year later, the Chen Martinez Family Lending Fund was operating in 3 communities, had helped 42 families achieve homeownership or avoid displacement, and was generating steady returns for 21 investor families. The expansion had been careful and strategic, with each new market requiring extensive community engagement before we began offering services. More importantly, the fund had become a model for other communities, seeking to combine private investment with social impact. Marcus had fielded inquiries from organizations across the state interested in replicating our approach, and we were developing training materials to help other communities establish similar funds. Maya, I think it's time to write a book about what we've learned. Ryan suggested during our annual investor meeting, which now filled the largest conference room at the community center. The story of how a family conflict led to a business model that's helping dozens of families deserves to be shared more widely. The suggestion intrigued me, but it also felt premature. Ryan, we're still learning and evolving. I'm not sure we're ready to present ourselves as experts who have figured everything out. Maybe that's exactly why you should write it now, Patricia interjected. While you're still discovering new challenges and solutions, while the lessons are fresh and the emotions are honest. Patricia's transformation over the past 2 years had been remarkable, but her suggestion that I share our story publicly represented a level of confidence in my judgment that still surprised me sometimes. What would be the purpose of the book? To promote our fund or to help other communities develop their own approaches? Both, Bob answered, and to demonstrate that business success and social responsibility don't have to be contradictory goals. As our meeting concluded and our investor families departed with their quarterly reports and updates on upcoming lending opportunities, I found myself alone in the conference room with Ryan, Patricia, and Bob, the 4 people whose relationships had been most fundamentally changed by the journey we had shared. Maya, do you ever regret buying our mortgage? Patricia asked suddenly. The question surprised me because the answer was so clearly obvious. Patricia, purchasing your mortgage was the best investment decision I've ever made, and not just because of the financial returns. What makes it the best? Because it led to everything else. The improved relationship with you and Bob, the expansion into multiple properties, the development of the fund, the community partnerships, the opportunity to help dozens of families, even this conversation we're having right now. None of it would have happened if I hadn't taken that risk 18 months ago. Ryan reached across the table and took my hand. Maya, I'm proud of what you've built, but I'm even more proud of how you've built it. You could have used your financial position to punish people who underestimated you, but instead you used it to create opportunities for everyone. Patricia nodded in agreement. Maya, when I called you worthless, I was revealing my own ignorance, not your value. But you didn't respond with anger or revenge. You responded with patience and the willingness to let people grow and change. Maybe that's the real lesson of our story, Bob suggested. That worth isn't something other people can determine for us, and that the best responses to criticism are the ones that prove critics wrong while still leaving room for them to become allies. As we turned off the lights and locked up the community center, I reflected on the truth in Bob's observation. The woman who had once called me worthless had become one of my strongest supporters and most trusted business partners. The husband who had once dismissed my financial judgment was now seeking my advice on major decisions. The family dinners that had once felt like endurance tests had become strategic planning sessions for ventures that were changing multiple lives. Maya, Patricia said as we reached our cars in the parking lot, I have one more confession to make. What's that? I'm grateful that I was wrong about you. If I had been right, if you had actually been the person I thought you were, Ryan would have married someone who couldn't have created any of this. My blindness inadvertently led him to someone extraordinary. Patricia, you weren't wrong to want the best for Ryan. You were just wrong about what the best looked like. And now I know that the best looks like someone who builds wealth to create opportunities, who responds to criticism with growth rather than anger, and who sees business as a tool for helping families rather than just accumulating money. As we said our goodbyes and drove home through the familiar streets of Riverside Hills, I felt a deep satisfaction that had nothing to do with investment returns or portfolio balances. The mortgage that had started as a defensive gesture had become the foundation for genuine family partnership and community impact. The woman who had called me worthless had discovered that I owned her mortgage, but more importantly, she had discovered that worth comes from character, capability, and the courage to use success in service of something larger than yourself. And I had discovered that the best victories are the ones that transform critics into allies, that turn conflicts into collaborations, and that prove that families can achieve extraordinary things when they choose to see each other clearly and work together toward shared goals. The modest apartment where Ryan and I had planned this journey still felt like home, but now it also felt like headquarters for ventures that were helping dozens of families build their own homes and secure their own futures. Patricia's monthly mortgage payment still arrived electronically each month, but it had been joined by dozens of other payments from families whose dreams were becoming reality, through our willingness to see opportunity where traditional lenders saw only risk. The Chen Martinez Family Lending Fund had grown beyond anything we had imagined when we first sat around our small dining table discussing the possibilities. But the real success wasn't measured in dollars or properties or even families served. The real success was measured in relationships rebuilt, assumptions challenged, and the discovery that worth is something we demonstrate through our actions rather than something others bestow upon us through their approval. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up, just click and check them out.